Greetings, Toffees. Welcome back to another episode of the Blue Frontier. James here, joined by Ryan and Shan for part 2 of our Everton 24-25 team assessment. In part 1, we brought you a boatload of numbers from the year that just ended to set the stage for where Angus Kinnear and company might look to improve the existing personnel this summer. Now, really fun stuff, going position by position and discussing a bunch of potential names and targets. In this episode, we're going to quickly recap the main areas of opportunity that we arrived at in episode 1, which if you haven't listened to, go back and check it out. And then we're going to get into the positions and a bunch of different names, so buckle up. Before we get into it, just a reminder that if you enjoy the show, please support us by subscribing, leaving us a rating and review on your podcast platform of choice, follow us on socials, and join our Discord. And with that, I'll hand it off to Shan to get the ball rolling. I'm excited for this one.
Thanks, James. So we're going to go into, before we start getting into the players, which will be in abundance, so you will get your money's worth, I promise. But we're going to get into some major themes, right? And as James mentioned before, really kind of comes from the team assessment. And we're going to go through 7 of them. But kind of to start that beforehand, really like the common theme we're seeing is, especially going from last year, is attack is bad, style of play helped under Moyes, but there are serious needs and considerations. And I'm going to go through the first 2 and then hand it off to my co-host for the next 5. But number 1, we need more goal scorers besides Njai and Beto, right? And of course, I think we're singing, everyone's tune on that one, just given you look at the numbers, right? It's pretty ugly outside of those 2. And so, from us, what we see is right wing, center attacking mid, the bench, right? Getting some goals from the bench, crazy concept, I know, especially center forward, and talking about that a little bit more, and just kind of getting more players forward into the box, right, to provide that kind of dangerous outlet that we just didn't have this season. Secondly, we need more players to be defenders one-on-one, right? You look at a right wing, a fullback into space, essentially, right, to create more chances and help with possession. It cannot just be Njai, right? And that's the big kind of thing that we see, especially the eye test will tell you, as well as the numbers, in just Iliman Njai is kind of our only threat when it comes to Everton.
Yeah, I think that's the idea, right? We talked about that on the team assessment. If you've got someone that's really a threat 1v1, it can help with the possession a little bit. It'll back people off and allow us to get people forward. And I think number 3 here is need more open play creation from forwards and others. And I think this works with the above. If number 1 is you need more goal scorers, so say you got a right wing coming in that's more of a goal scoring type, fine, the creation has to come from somewhere else to get him the ball. So Charlie obviously helps. We went through his numbers. He was pretty effective in his tenure with Everton to help create. But you need more from all the forward positions. Even guys score, they can create too. Beto's a guy that scores goals, but it's not necessarily the most creative. So maybe you need guys around him. And it would be lovely to get a fullback or 2 that could cross the ball and really threaten the goal a little bit. I think that's it. Number 4, need better progression. If you guys recall, remember the progression numbers?
Quite bad. Quite bad across the board.
Yeah, and so, look, you can't rely on Njai to carry past everyone, get the ball deep. Ideally, you want him to get the ball closer to goal. We've seen what a threat he is. So I think this one's going to be big emphasis on. It'd be nice to have at least a center mid that could pass it forward a little bit more. I think that's critical. And fullbacks in particular. Like, I'd love to see some guys that can really carry the ball a little bit out wide. That'd be a nice change of pace. It's been a while. No, that's not a call for Nathan Patterson.
Yeah, no, it is not. Next up, we have ball retention. We know this is something David Moyes has talked about. The team wanting to be able to dictate play with the ball at their feet a little bit better, retain it, move it around, and I think predominantly we expect that to come from our center mids and center backs. We cannot have the over-reliance on our attacking players to drop back and defend as much as they had to last season. It goes into getting players forward and into the box. They can't do that if they're constantly trying to track back and help cover for those defensive positions.
Right, and we saw those ridiculous defensive numbers, contribution numbers from Harrison, and remember Jespers were just crazy, right? Yeah, so I mean that's not helpful at all. I do think one factor of that is I think you can take a little more risk there too because of theme number 6, like leverage your defense. We've got a really strong spine. You've got Pickford that's capable of making saves. You've got center backs that can really, really defend and run in space. You've got Ghana. If you mix in someone else with him that can really cover for those fullbacks, like we can pick guys there that are a little bit more attacking in nature. Whereas if you remember the Dyche profiles, like you really couldn't have anyone there that couldn't defend, So I think that's different, and it's going to be hard to transform this team because a lot of pieces there are kind of from a different style of play. I don't know if we can do it in one window. And look, I think the last one is too, number 7. Look, if players are pushed up higher, we need guys that can still win the ball winning or containment, one or the other. I don't care what it is. If guys are pushed up higher, especially fullbacks, like the defensive mids need to cover so we don't get killed on the counter, because you could see that happening, right? I mean, no question. Ghana would sniff out everything, and we mentioned that in the team assessment. So, okay, 7 major themes, guys, right? Need more goal scorers besides Njai and Beto, 1. 2, need to beat more players to beat defenders, 1v1. 3, more open play creation. 4, better progression. 5, ball retention. 6, find some more aggressive profiles and leverage your defense. And number 7 is guys that can win the ball, contain in the midfield, so we can be more aggressive and score more goals, right? Because that's the biggest thing. We just didn't score goals. So, without further ado, I know everyone wants to get in the darn name, so do I. But, so what we're going to do is position by position, we're going to look first who's still there. And then we've got some criterion in which we've judged their performance this past year. And I'm pulling the Y-Scout indexes. They do these top 30s at each position. I also have my own ID models. They're not necessarily pure performance models, but I think they're interesting to give an objective viewpoint of positional performance. And we'll also consider some other criteria, some other considerations, because there's some interesting aspects of certain positions that we need to consider. And then we're going to go through the names. We're going to start with the freeze. We'll go with guys that have been relegated in other clubs across Europe, not just England. Then we'll do some data mining where we pulled the screws and made some decisions and pulled the levers and spit out some names through the machine and see what it comes up with. And we'll also look at players we've been linked with, maybe a couple wild cards just for fun, and maybe some North American players too. That's the general approach, gentlemen. So without further ado, we ready to do this?
Yeah, and we're going to start with the most exciting position of them all, which is, of course, striker. And we know that point number 1, need more goal scorers. And we know that if we sign 5 strikers, that will completely solve our problem. So we've got more than 5 names on this list here. We can start to get into it. But before we do, we got to talk about who's still here, which, of course, you got to lead with Beto. We know that he's still here. Dominic Calvert-Lewin, still maybe here, might be gone, still up in the air. And then, of course, Yusuf Chermiti, who is a really interesting one, and I think a lot hinges on what Everton decide to do with him in the offseason. Ryan, run us through the models and the Y-Scout indexes and whatnot.
Yeah, Y-Scout indexes are what they are, right? I mean, I don't know the sausage making behind those. I can walk through my models. But so in this example, Y-Scout index, top 30 center forwards in the Premier League this past year. Beto was 18th and DCL was 22nd. Now, keep in mind, not many teams have center forwards that play. So I don't know if that's real impressive or not, but it shows you that Beto's maybe a little bit better performing. And then I've got my ID models. I have 40 center forwards that made the cut. That's their primary position. And looking at the models, overall ratings, Beto 28 out of 50, DCL 40, and Broja at 48 out of 50. The less said about him, the better. In terms of the target profile, though, you're looking at the 9th, 10th, and 14th rated players. So in their defense, some of this is contingent upon the style of play. And I know that. So that's why when you do talent ID, you got to be cognizant of that. But you're typically looking for players of a certain style. So now the nice part is that when they bought Beto, they were smart enough to realize that he wasn't just a target player. So yes, they paid a lot for him, but bravo recruitment team for that. That was smart. So I think he's fairly adaptable. He can play in some different styles. So what's interesting is that Beto was the 13th rated player under kind of my more defensive profile and the 12th rated in terms of scores. I mean, he was a really efficient goal scorer, but 49th out of 50 in creation. Now, Dom was 48th and Bro was 43, but like some of this is system, but to me, this kind of throws a little bit curveball into it. So look, we go to our first issue, like we need more goal scorers besides Njai and Beto. So we know that. So if we're going to look for another center forward, that should be number one consideration. But would you maybe say you're going to keep Beto and get another player? Would you maybe look for someone that has a different profile that's a little more well-rounded and that could create? I'm kind of curious what you guys think. And we'll get to the poll in a second, too, which is great on the Discord. I think that's helpful.
Yeah, I think I would. I mean, we know that the recruitment at the striker position for the last few years has been, though Beto is an example of like forward-looking perhaps, centered around Shan and needing to recruit for a player who could play in his system. We're no longer constrained by that. We are now currently constrained by the style of play of David Moyes. But David Moyes has shown the ability to play with guys who can do
more
a little bit more expansive than what we've been hindered by in the past. So I think it's a really good idea to look for someone who's a little bit more well-rounded, someone who can maybe, be a little more fluid with the front three, can create more certainly. We know that style of play is limiting there, but I do think that You don't need a big lumbering 9 and an Everton team. I don't think that's something we need to just marry ourselves to.
So that being said, so our number one criteria is more goal scorers, of course, but 2 and 3 are need more players to beat defenders 1v1, and 3 is open play creation. I mean, Sean, do you think maybe those are not as important, but still kind of considerations if we're going to go look at a different profile, right? I mean, that's what you want, right?
No, I agree, because I think similar to James, you want some. To me, like, you look at like Moyes' history, right? In terms of like somebody like Mikel Antonio, like he loved that guy. And part of it was, I think, hold up was a function of it. But I think being able to progress the ball, I think having some of these skills that we don't have in our team, right? Because it's very obvious just looking at the numbers where we struggle. Progression is definitely one of them. But I think, as you just mentioned, the ability to play creatively, right? So I think getting a forward that by no means is, I hate to throw shade at him, Neil Mopé, where he's kind of getting bodied and whatnot, but somebody that's a little bit more physical, but at the same time has some skill to him, I think is a good contrast to Beto. And let's just say for whatever reason he gets hurt or, just isn't ineffective, it gives you another kind of wrinkle to play with as the team gets talented around him.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting comparison too, and I want to get to the first person we've been linked with because I think there is a comparison to be made. But let's take a step back at the poll too, because it's one thing to look at the type of profile you want to have, but we did ask this question in the poll, and I think it's an interesting one because it's one thing to look for a profile, it's another thing to look at, are you trying to get a superstar here? Do you just want depth? So I'm curious if you're surprised at the results here, if one of you guys want to crack open the poll here.
Yeah, so we put this poll out on our Discord and asking the question, what should Everton do at the center forward position? First option was go big and sell Beto. Just try to replace him completely. Second option, go cheap and find a backup or competition for Beto, which got 38% of the vote. Third option was go with Beto and Chermiti, buy a forward that can also play center forward, so like a versatile guy who can play across the front line, which got 47% of the vote. And the other options kind of on the fringes, go big, try to keep Beto as well, and then other. So most people seem to not want us to really spend big, specifically at the number 9 position. And I think that's an approach that I generally agree with.
Pretty good summary of that, right? I mean, because those two options can be somewhat the same thing. You get a forward that's somewhat versatile that can also be the backup competition. And we've got some names in there that I think might suffice that. Do you want to explore the other option provided in the Discord?
Yeah, I can do that. Our good old Toffee Liz asked, will you be handing out any 1 million checks for voting? And really kind of the follow-up to that was also the other option didn't allow me to write in, we keep DCL and he lights the world on fire, but please understand that was my vote. Liz, that probably would have been DL and Mike's vote too, so you wouldn't have been alone there.
Well, and let's be clear, too, because of DL and Liz's insistence, we have a couple items in here, players, where we will point out where we feel like their hair factor puts them over the top. So Just stay tuned. We'll have that in there. So, all right. So let's kind of apply above what we came up with, and think about the different players. Before we get into the expiring contracts, though, I think it's very interesting that we seemed very interested in signing Liam Delap. Maybe it was opportunity. I think that's probably what it was with the lower release clause. I have to admit, Sean, what you said, and I didn't think about this before, there is some Mikel Antonio a little bit to him, the way he carries the ball and could generate some chances by himself. Hopefully they're not similar to each other in terms of operating automobiles. But it looks like Delap's going to sign with Chelsea and it doesn't matter. Do we think this is a good thing? Or I know we talked about this a bit in the Discord conversation, Sean, but I don't think we've put it on the pod, and James wasn't part of that. To me, I think if you're going to buy him, I think you were going to sell Beto anyway, but it does seem like Moyes must have really, really liked this player, I think, to go after him, because I don't think they're dramatically different in terms of effect, even if Delap's obviously younger. If you're planning to the future, maybe that makes sense. But I always thought you're going to have to give him big wages anyway to sign. So I'm curious everyone else's take on this.
So quickly, the conversation that Ryan's referring to for those that aren't in the Discord is we kind of just put up a discussion in terms of just Liam Delap or Beto, right? And really the conversation centered around kind of the type of season they both had last year. And of course, Beto's was pretty impressive when you look at the minutes played versus Liam Delap. Of course, he's on a worse team. but in terms of the actual seasons they had, not too dissimilar, right? So a lot of kind of the discussion and kind of heated passion came to that. In terms of what I would consider the situation at hand, I think it's best case scenario in that the timing of it, right? I didn't want this to linger on. I didn't want this to go into June, July, right? Because I think it would have given clubs some hope, like Everton, right? Because at the end of the day, when you see a $30 million release clause for a player like that, I think you have to be interested, right? Of course, you can argue his potential, you can argue where the ceiling is, but I think he's also shown in the short time I've seen him play, he's a very strong player. I think he's going to get a little bit stronger too. He's pretty quick. He's got a really, really strong shot on him. I think he's a pretty good finisher. So he does some basic things I think that you want from a striker and I think he's pretty good when it comes to progressing and dribbling the ball. So I think for Chelsea, like I don't blame the player at all, by the way. I think it's actually a pretty good landing spot for him.
Yeah, why do people you think are so, what a terrible idea, blah, blah, blah?
I think it's just being lost in the Chelsea circus, right? Like it's just... he might get accidentally sold with one of their hotels, in the next 12 months. So, but like in all seriousness, I prayed to God that he didn't go to United, just because he seems like a decent kid, and I think he's got a pretty bright future. Chelsea seemed like a pretty good fit for him, and yeah, it would have. United's got some other things that they're working on anyway. So yeah, to close it, I'm not sad that we lost out on him. I appreciate us trying to go for him because I think it shows good intent. But I'm just so glad that it got sorted very quickly.
It's a lot of allocation of dollars to maybe a position. I mean, based on our poll said that we don't really need. I mean, no one wanted to go big and replace Beto necessarily. A couple of people said go big and keep Beto. But I mean, James, is this just kind of maybe works out for the best for us?
I think this is a really good scenario for us. I understand, to Sean's point, why we're in for him for that price. You stand a decent chance of making a profit on the player, but I don't think he dramatically improves us. I think there's so many other areas of the team that you could get a lot more out of Beto just by surrounding him by better attacking players on either side. And I don't think he's even that much better than Beto right now. Yeah, he's younger and maybe has a higher ceiling, but does he improve Everton at the moment? I was really surprised by how desperately a lot of people seemed to want him to come, and talking about the pitch that they would make to Liam
Like transformational player?
Yeah, no, he's not. He's not that to me. He's maybe a nice feather in your cap if you have a complete squad to build around him, but he's not going to dramatically change Everton's fortunes one direction or another, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. There's a scenario where you sell Beto if you get a big number. It's the same market that would overvalue a center forward. And
sure.
And from PSR, you're fine if they're willing to front the catch. And, you come out with about a similar comparable player with a much better upside. That's fine. But yeah, I mean, how much cash do you have? We know we have to replace a lot of players. So I don't think it's a big loss that we didn't get him done, frankly.
Absolutely not. Agreed.
But yeah, and I think there's maybe some more bang for the buck. So, okay, let's first look at pure bang for the buck. Expiring contract players. There's a couple guys on this list that, I mean, come on now, guys. Like Cristiano Ronaldo is number one. This is a shoo-in, right? It's a layup.
The Friedkins wanted to make a statement of intent. The worst possible statement of
back
intent.
To Manchester. He can live there and commute.
Just a reminder, United paid some decent money to get him back for the second time, and I don't think it went out so well. So another great move by them.
Yeah, I mean, wasn't he trying to pressure with the Ralph Rangnick side? I mean, what? That's United now,
He used City as a bargaining chip, and it worked. I don't know how that happened, but good for him.
Bravo. Head to MLS, tag team at Miami. So we'll have two people that will not press at all. All right, Jonathan David, no chance here, right?
None. Yeah, None. I mean, he's a wonderful player, but not going to be persuaded to come to Merseyside.
Yeah, he is a Canadian. Got to give him a little credit for that. Could have played for the U.S. Fine. I think he's slightly maybe overrated, but that's just my opinion. Good all-around forward, though, for sure, and would give you the different profile. All right, Callum Wilson. We've been linked. This got, by the way, lots of votes for the worst transfer link idea in the Discord when I threw it out here. I mean, he always seemed to score against us, but injury prone. Was he like 33? No, right? I mean, I don't know.
Well, the funny thing is, Ryan, Newcastle didn't originally sign him, but are looking to sign him, but it's an incentive-based deal, which kind of tells you everything, and I imagine those incentives are based on games played because his worst ability is availability at this point in his career. Yeah,
I think you look at some of the other guys too. Danny Ings. By the way, Danny Ings had back-to-back years in the in the league that
Yeah.
were unbelievable.
He was
Like,
doing good.
Yeah, I
Credit
mean,
to him.
he would definitely improve our ink ratio, I think, but no, I don't see that at all. I mean, he did play for Moyes. I guess it's not the craziest thing I've ever heard. I don't like that idea. Jamie Vardy, I think, is past it at this point. Again, these guys aren't available necessarily.
I think Jamie Vardy, just to be clear, is paying the two Robbies and just these random podcasters to like just say he's being linked to Arsenal and like he would be a great fit for coming off the bench. And so it's just, it's like Fabrizio with Dean Hudson, right? It's just funny to like see like where these guys. So just pay attention to that if you see those type of things, right? It's just like, that's interesting.
I mean, amazing story, right? Jamie Vardy, great story,
Incredible.
Great career.
Yeah,
wouldn't be surprised.
Deserves a statue. Absolutely. Like,
wouldn't be surprised if he makes his way over to North America or just sits in pubs for the rest of his life and hangs out, which, good for him. Pain in the butt against for sure, but the ultimate poacher. I mean, his role is very specific, though. Still is. All right, Javi Puado from Espanyol, 27, not really a center forward in the Premier League, in my opinion. But anyway, a name worth mentioning, different type of role. I mean, I think he's a decent player, but this is unlikely. This is probably someone that stays in Spain. I did mention this on the pod last time. Joaquin Correa from Inter, 30 years old, more of a second striker. He's not been good for a while, but you remember we were linked with this guy.
it was like the Herving Lozano days, right? Where it's just like, guys like that.
Yeah, I mean, there was a time where he was a decent player. I mean, he doesn't.
For sure.
It doesn't make a lot of sense here. Lucas Nemetka from Wolfsburg, not as good as his younger brother. 26 years old, just constantly injured, unfortunately. If you're going to do that, you might as well sign DCL. And he was never as good as Dominic Calvert-Lewin, frankly. But yeah, package deal to sign his brother, maybe. We'll get to him in a little bit. He's an interesting player. Luka Jovic, 27, only 27 still.
That's
AC
crazy.
Milan. Think about that. That guy has had 1 year. I mean, really.
Yeah. And he's just coasted on that ever since with very little to show for it, unfortunately for him.
I mean, really interesting in the box movement. He's always been that way, but it's never really been productive. I don't think this is a goer at all, right?
No, definitely not the type of punt we should be taking in that position, I don't think.
Good, because the next one I think is an absolute layup for David Moyes and Everton.
Oh, do you want to introduce it, Ryan? You've been giggling about.
No,
right,
I want to see
I'll
if you can do it.
Marko Arnautovic, 36 years old, Inter Milan, available on a free transfer. Of course, did play for Moyes. I mean,
plays multiple positions still.
No, not for me. No, thank you. Though,
still gives me nightmares from his Stoke days, and just kind of some of the things he did to Everton. That's a no-go for me too.
Hard pass.
Wait a second. Why not? I mean, he still is relatively productive. I mean, his team is in the Champions League finals here.
He'd be really good for the locker room, Ryan. So yeah.
All right. I'm just saying I wouldn't be surprised if something like this happens, guys. And this would not be that bad. He's not that bad. We're linked.
Aren't we trying to get our average age down? Like, wasn't that a thing?
I think.
Was it?
I mean, do you sign him to then loan Chermiti? Like, do you sign a 36-year-old as the backup and then just say, okay, well, Chermiti, you got to find minutes somewhere else? Like,
And I think we're going to get to some better options. Just saying.
So I think this guy's a lot better than what you guys are saying, by the way. And so I actually wouldn't be all that upset. Partially maybe because I would just like the fume behind it, but that's just me being the sick person I am. Oh, I know, but they shouldn't. He's actually not that bad. 36, he's still pretty athletic.
He's not bad. I'm not saying that like he's a bad player. I'm just saying at this point, like I feel like we could get a functional backup that potentially either might be here or would be a much more purposeful loan. That's all I'm saying.
Yes, and you may be right. Anyway, 6 goal contributions in the league in 550 minutes. Regardless. Okay, Luc de Jong, 33 years old, aerial presence, target guy. Yeah, I mean, he's probably not going to leave the Netherlands, but still not that horrible a player. It's an interesting name. Probably not the one I would necessarily go for. Okay, relegation teams. Not that many in teams outside of the Premier League, but a couple. We talked about Delap. Any of these guys we think interesting at all?
I love Kamaldeen Sulemana. I mean, I know
he's in here because he came up. As a center
he's not
forward,
just to be clear. We know he's not a typical center forward. He just showed up, as Ryan said. But he's somebody that when you talk about a profile player we don't have on the team, I think he kind of fits it right. Incredibly pacey, right? Pace for days. I think he's got decent skill on the ball. He's a bit of a nutcase, and I don't blame him, given that he's been at Southampton and kind of just has thrown a hissy fit most of his time there. But then again, he chose them over us, so his loss. But it could be his gain now. I think if the price tag is probably under 10 million, if I had to give an amount. It'll be interesting, right? Because Will Still now is there. Does he see him as a functional piece? Does Sulemana want to stay? But if he's available, and I think if it's at a deal like that, I think you have to take it because, as you spoke, Ryan, right, you're going to need to replace a ton of players, right, in this kind of squad. And you look at from a needs assessment, he fits a lot of boxes we don't have.
I wish he was left-footed, and he could play on the right side. That would be decent. So, and I don't.
You can
really
take
know
Dwight's left foot, and then he can give him So
paste it on. Any of the Leicester guys?
So in terms of Otson, Edouard, and Patsendaka, right? Edouard, and funny enough, right? He was actually linked to Atlanta United, if you remember, Ryan, fit for like a big fee, but he just didn't care like when he was at Leicester. So it's just kind of an interesting story. I wouldn't really go near him, not just because of last year. I just don't think he really kind of fills what we need. Patsendaka is interesting because I think he's really pacey, but I think we've had enough of a sample size of seeing him in the Premier League and Championship, and I just don't think he would truly kind of be effective.
Very one-dimensional.
Very one-dimensional.
Like Vardy, but not Vardy, but the
he
same
scored
type of
4
player,
goals
right?
in a Europa League match once, and that's what I remember him from, right? Credit to him, but I just don't see him as somebody that would really function as a good backup. And really provide any sort of skill set outside of just running straight. But even if he gets the ball, I don't have faith in him in finishing it.
Yeah, he's a classic recruitment mistake, if you ask me. He's a guy, if you watched him in the Red Bull system, he's great because he's a poacher, he's really direct, he's really fast, and he would finish a bit. But everything they did at that point, the second they won the ball, it was straight down the middle every single time. So he'd get on the end of a couple, bury a couple, and their other striker I really liked was on performance-enhancing drugs. So either one of those two were not the guys you pick. That's a mistake. I knew it the second they spent him on that. I made sense because he's just like Vardy, just younger at the time. But, I mean, come on, man. That's a very distinct profile that you're locking into there, and I don't know how well that always works. Okay, I have to admit, a lot of these positions, I didn't really consider loans that seriously, but this one, I feel like strikers, just because there are only so many positions out there, that a loan might make a lot of sense. And I got to admit, the first guy I figure we had to talk about, because we're going to probably hear about him anyway, is none other than Evan Ferguson. Is this a crazy idea? I mean, certainly didn't go very well with West Ham.
Poor kid's got to play some games. Like it's so much talk of his potential for years now, and he just can't get consistent game time. I actually wouldn't hate the move. Evan Ferguson on loan to Everton could work out kind of nicely. Is he better than Beto right now? Not, but might be more versatile than a Chermiti, even though Chermiti's really versatile. I just have a hard time.
He's 20 years old. I
know he's still only 20 is the crazy thing.
Can you get maybe an option to buy here?
Loan with an option, I would be very interested in looking at the terms of that deal. I think that could make a lot of sense for all parties involved, and I think David Moyes would be one who could maybe persuade him to take the next step in his career at Everton.
Sean, Evan Ferguson on loan.
Loan with option seems okay. Loan with obligation, a big no. I think we're just at a place, and there are players, right? Like, we could talk about Jesper, right? That would be interesting potentially, or other guys. But I for all that Brighton's done well, that loan couldn't have been more of a disaster.
Could they not have found someone that he'd have played? I mean,
I know, but like what's surprising to me is everything kind of built for him to play. Like
agreed.
Antonio decides to get, and I'm glad he's okay. Nicholas Fulkrug was injured for almost the entire year, right? So it's kind of Jared Bowen, and then Bowen got injured. So it's kind of almost suspect how he didn't really play. And I feel like Graham Potter, right, he would kind of use him for what? So it's a
question
weird one.
Marks for sure, right?
Yeah, question marks I have, because I think that actually in terms of concept alone wasn't the worst idea, right? But like in terms of execution, it couldn't have gone any worse. So I'd be intrigued, but I also, like, if we lost out on him, I wouldn't be, shedding any tears.
James.
I just think it's on a low risk deal for Everton. I think it would potentially make a lot of sense. But and at this point, I feel like he's a player who's still going to command certain fees and things like that, where he hasn't really done anything to justify it. So for that reason, I think it probably wouldn't work out in a favorable situation for us, but we'll just have to see.
I also don't know if he was ever a great fit at Brighton, too. I mean, they bought him cheap for like Bohemians or something ridiculous, but they didn't know maybe he was going to be this great. But all right, next one on the list, loan, Tammy Abraham from Roma. It's not the worst idea. I know the finishing numbers are pretty inconsistent, but he's a little different. I mean, he's got size, so, Moyes is probably thinking a good old kind of UK-based center forward, but he's kind of fluid. He links play pretty well. He gets chances. He's not super precise with his finishing. I mean, you could do worse in a backup role. He's English, so counts as homegrown. I don't know. I mean, there's some other options on here that are worth discussing. It's a thought.
He is the only striker that scored at Chelsea, which is kind of funny to think about, right? Of course, Nico Jackson.
Killer year, right?
But because I mean, Lukaku, right, couldn't even figure it out for a while. So I think
his first year at Roma, he was unbelievable too. He's not been good since, though.
Yeah, I think it's very interesting. My worry, though, is with him is, let's just say if we could convince him to come, I just feel like you have almost the same issue we have with Beto and DCL, where it's like you have two guys that I just don't know will be happy, right? And, of course, Moyes is a good manager, so I think he'll manage it as best as he can. I feel like he's a little bit injury-prone, too, so maybe that kind of, is one of those where he doesn't have to be a full-time starter, so it's not as much pressure. But at the same time, it is also a little bit curious, right? Because he was loaned out to Milan. So it's just, he's kind of, I think, struggling to figure out his home. Does Roma just kind of, with the dual club relationship, right, kind of almost do us a solid there? I don't know. It's interesting. That one, like Evan Ferguson, right, there could be some, you could kind of convince me either way, on that one.
Well, I think the key is, too, I mean, he blew out his ACL, in the middle of his Roma tenure. So his first year, he was quite good. But yeah, now that, I mean, Milan has no real use for him, right? They brought in Santiago Jimenez. So I don't, who knows what that looks like. Yeah, and the Roma link, it can't hurt, right? I don't know. It's an interesting option, right? I mean, if you're looking at cheap options because you want to go big elsewhere, it's not the craziest idea.
Yeah, it feels like he's destined to play for Everton. It feels like maybe this is the time the stars will finally align, where we're not forking out a ton of money to Chelsea to buy him. We can get him on a lower risk deal on maybe, back end of his career, but I still think he could be a useful piece.
All right, thinking of that, low risk kind of high reward type players. Two names, younger players that I think are pretty talented guys, but maybe haven't quite hit it off, that might be interested in being worked in. Number one, El Bilal Torre, 23 years old, from Atalanta, loaned out to Stuttgart. Remember, we're in on him big time, right? Really liked him, couldn't get the deal done. Now he broke his foot on international duty with Mali, had surgery, came back. He looked really quick to me still, and he is lightning. The athletic profile is insane on this guy. Re-injured again. Might have been able to play at the end of the season. They just kind of sat him out. So he did have an obligation, but I don't think they're taking that up. But I think maybe their intent was. So that says to me that maybe Atalanta wants to move him. Now, Gasperini leaving. Maybe someone else comes in and wants to stick with him. I don't know. It could be Pioli. It could be a bunch of people, but I mean, this is kind of a dare to be great. If you get a loan maybe with an option to buy, kind of like Stuttgart had, I mean, might be one that could kind of do both. Give the backup as well as maybe pave the way a little bit for the future. Another one is Youssoufa Muoko, who didn't play very well or much at Nice. Contract ends in a year. Dortmund would probably sell. Maybe not the athletic profile, maybe not the best fit in the Premier League, but these are similar profile where they're a little bit younger players that have never really broken through, but have always been regarded with a lot of potential. Either of these guys interesting to you guys?
Yeah, I would probably say El Bilal Torre would be one that interests me. I think, he's just had a tough injury kind of ride as of late, but in terms of the profile, it's much more different, right, than Beto, and I think it provides, as you said, Ryan, he's a pretty pacey guy. I think he can potentially be used at a different position further forward if needed. So it gives us a little bit more versatility in the attack that I don't think we have, right? And I think there's
just a pace off the bench, right? I mean,
yeah, exactly, right. You talk about fresh legs, right? You bring that guy off the bench. I think he'd be, a really, really big handful in a different way than Beto. So I would be really interested in a loan with an option, even depending on what the obligation fee is. I would consider it on, let's just say appearances or goals, whatever. We kind of figure out what makes sense to the committee. So Moukoko, yeah, I mean, I feel like.
Well, first of all, how old is he? Are we sure?
I was going to ask the same question. Do we know?
I don't think he has the same physical profile, right? And that profile does play in the Premier League. It matters. I like some of the stuff that he does, but I don't know. He doesn't excite me as much. I mean, in terms of the impact on a match, I think.
I just hope Atalanta's just not, too upset that we fleece them with Ben Godfrey. It's kind of one of those things.
Did he go on a permanent to Ipswich, or was that just a loan?
It was
that was just a loan.
Yeah.
Ipswich was smarter than Atalanta in that.
He's coming back.
Right. Yeah.
Convert him to a right back or defensive mid. It's gonna. I mean, look, it happened to Scott McTominay. It can happen.
Great athlete.
Kind of. COVID killed. Long COVID. That was the excuse the whole time.
I don't have much to add to what Shan said. I think he said it very well, but I was.
You're going to have something to add for the next guy.
Super high on El Bilal Touré, and I remain super high on him even despite the injuries. I think it would be an awesome signing for us.
Yeah, I always liked him. All right, James, going to let you do the honor in the next one.
Oh, boy. Yeah. Wow. Really generous of you, Ryan. I appreciate it. Yeah. So, we had this link come out today. Multiple Premier League clubs.
Not a bad player. I mean, come on, man.
I haven't even introduced him yet. Let me get to the name. Multiple Premier League clubs, including allegedly Man United, West Ham, and Everton, considering a possible move for Al Hilal's or potentially a loan. So Alexander Mitrovic, 30 years old, I believe.
Sorry, I have to laugh at that.
40 million for this guy? Or a loan.
I mean, that is just, how can you not laugh about that? That's just so hilarious. Like, or for free. Like,
yeah.
It's so awesome. Saudi.
Yeah, I mean, dude, that place, I'll tell you, some of their teams have actually finally gotten good, but I mean, okay, this got some votes for the worst shout. I mean, would a loan be the worst idea? I don't know.
I wouldn't have said it. I actually always liked Mitrovic as a player.
He's got to want to play, though.
I can tell you paying $40 million for him would not be very halal, so yeah.
Yeah.
Can you imagine? Like, that would be just so dumb for anyone to pay this money for him.
How old is he? Like 30? Like
30.
Yeah.
30.
No.
I mean, he's actually shockingly.
He's good.
Thought he'd be older.
But no. Yeah.
I haven't watched a ton of the Saudi League, I have to admit.
I hope Man U pay 40 for him. Just do it.
Two smart decisions, James. They can't have three in a row, right?
That's what I mean.
40 million. There you go. Yes. I don't think this one's a goer. If it was a loan, maybe I still think that would be a little bit awkward.
They would pay 40 million for him, and then it would come after that. They could have used a loan for him, but they decided to just pay the 40 million. So
two paths for Everton. You can go El Bilal Touré on loan, or you can go Alexander Mitrovic. Which path does Kinnear and company choose?
Yeah, right. That'll tell you all.
Give me that EBT, baby.
All right. I'm kind of with you. I like that shout, right? Okay, let's get into the data a little bit. If we're going to pull some guys out that have some versatility. So we're looking at guys that could play center forward, maybe some other positions that can create and or carry the ball 24 or under. There's one guy in here that is not 24 under, but we'll get to him in a second. I'm looking at that. I'm like, that guy's not 24 under. I'll let someone else do the honors in the first guy. I love him dearly, but we're looking at guys that can create and carry in addition to score. This guy's a pretty attractive player.
Names we've heard so far, there have been tentative. First and foremost, Nick Voltemada. Love this guy. He's awesome. 23 years old. He's 6'6". Not really a striker, but he is so fun to watch on the ball because for a guy his size, he's able to move incredibly fluidly. He's dynamic. He's not super strong, but he's really surprisingly able to beat a lot of guys with his cleverness on the dribble, not necessarily raw pace. And he's, again, the versatility. He probably could play up top, but I think he's better as more of a playmaker. This signing, this would be a huge statement of intent. I think it'd be a tough sell. I think he's going to have a ton of suitors, but man, this would be like a marquee type signing for me that would really say the Friedkins are mean business.
I think he can play with his back to goal too. I've seen enough of it too. I mean, he's skinny, but I mean, he's 6'6". I mean, he can back guys and he's strong.
Guys have a hard time
but
getting
you gotta
around
admit,
him,
like,
yeah.
Yeah, oh, yeah. But the other thing is, it's quick. His feet are unbelievable. Like, it doesn't even make sense. They're so light and whatnot. But you got to admit, like, when you think of a David Moyes team, you always think of kind of the second striker, attacking mid type that's tall, that can get his head on stuff, and I mean, this guy, I love, if you wanted a guy that can carry, that can create a little bit as well as score, I'd love this guy. My guess is he's going to cost at least 35 million euros, maybe more. If you start looking at more than that, I don't know, but it's still Stuttgart. I mean, they're not going to sit there and just rob teams blind for it. But I think he's one to watch. I think he's a really interesting player. I'd love to see him at Everton, and I think a lot of people have said that as well. What about some of the other names on this list? He's the one that really stands out to me. Like when you start going through the data, I mean, a couple of these guys, like a guy like Brian Brobby at Ajax, I mean, he's not had the best season. He's only 22. He's more of a center forward. I don't see him really playing other positions, but he can create. He holds the ball up incredibly well. He's an absolute tank. He wants to leave. I don't know if they'd ask for a ton of money for him. There have been worse players to have as a backup. I don't know. Thoughts? Let's go through a couple more and maybe we can discuss them as a group. So Datro Fofana is a guy that was on loan. He's 22 at Chelsea. He can run with the ball incredibly well. He's super vertical, super fast, and can score. I think some of the rest of his game's a little bit limited, and I've always said that since he came out. And then I guess the other one is Paulinho's at Palmeiras. That's kind of a crazy shot, but like he's almost like a cam more so than a center forward. A little bit Cunha-ish, shall I say. Former Bayern Leverkusen guy. He can create and carry too. So what about some of those guys? Any kind of that group before we get to some of the others?
Yeah, so like Datro Fofana is an interesting one. I think when you talk about progression, Ryan, I think he's somebody that could be interesting. Brian Brobby, I think it's just kind of one of those where I just feel like there are other guys, and where we are as a club, I feel like last year would have made more sense. I feel like going forward, I just don't think that's the type of profile of player. Paulinho, he's a little bit of a head case. I worry about, because, like you said, former Bayer Leverkusen, now in Palmeiras. Is there a potential kind of option there? I just think there are some better guys that, of course, you talk about Woltemade, right? Just what a stud. But like, I just think there's some even other guys outside of him that I would look at rather than him. But Datro, if I had to kind of choose out of the three, but more of just a potential loan rather than a purchase.
Of those three, I'd actually probably go Robbie. I mean, he was highly sought after. He didn't have the best year. You get kind of on a market low value potentially, buy low, sell high type of thing. I mean, he offers the hold up, but he has a creative dimension that Beto certainly doesn't have. So even though similar in some respects, gives us something even a little bit different still.
Yeah, he's a real natural center forward. I've always kind of liked him for whatever reason, and he's a battler too. I think the fans would like him. So, okay, next group we're going to do 4. All right. The number 1 is Georges Mikau Utase from Lyon, 24 years old. He can carry. He can absolutely score. Not super tall guy. I've never understood why he hasn't tried to play kind of a position other than center forward. I mean, sometimes he'll drift over to the left and kind of run with it a little bit. Maybe not a traditional center forward, but maybe in the Premier League he could do that. There's just something about him I really like him. I just think he's a good football player. Georgian, right? Another one, Victor Hockey, or Rogue for us English types. 20 years old, Palmeiras. What people don't realize is Barca sold him back to Brazil in February, if you weren't paying attention, because it was kind of one of those off-window things for 25 plus 5 million. I mean, that would be shocking if we came in and stole him back in some capacity. Evan Gusson, 23 at Nice. This guy's a really interesting player. He's 6'2", absolute beast, a little bit kind of, maybe not perfectly precise, but he could play right wing, center forward type though too. I mean, he can play with his back to goal headers. Like, he's just a little inconsistent to me, but he's only 23 and he's kind of like a young 23, maybe he could peak a little bit later. And what about Luis Sincera, 25 years old? You believe he's 25? Like, it's a little surprising to me. Bournemouth had just bought him, but he's not really playing some. He's playing a little bit center forward. Maybe he's not a real center forward, but probably the Angus Kinnear link, not liking how he left, is probably a no-go. What do we think about some of these other guys?
Of that list, I kind of like Gasson, even though I've only watched him a little bit, but and touch looked, like you said, inconsistent, maybe a little heavy at times, shot decent, but nothing
maybe
crazy.
Something there.
Yeah, I think it feels like he's a player, if he starts to put pieces together, there's a very high ceiling there. I actually liked quite a bit of what I saw, even though there's some bad stuff too. 23, as you say, is like, you're not a little kid anymore, but I still think there's room for him to grow and develop as a player. Roca, I don't think, like, that doesn't make sense. At least at a 9, like, doesn't really fit the bill for a David Moyes. Sinistera, as you say, the Kinnear thing kind of rules him out, but actually I think could be pretty interesting because he can, again, positionally versatile, could offer something different off the left as well, and is a pretty solid player. I mean, Bournemouth's recruitment is nothing to turn your nose up at, even though that move hasn't worked out quite as well. So of that group, I'd say Gasson would be my top, followed by Sinistera if Kinnear can put his anger to bed.
But it'd be nice to have that player that maybe is more of a right wing but can play the other position, right? That's a little bit what we're like Voltamato a little bit.
Yeah.
He's just so injury prone. Like, and I also I'm not a big Sinistera fan. He's just kind of one of those guys where he came to Leeds. I thought it was interesting, right? Because, of course, we were in for him at that time. Don't think he set the world on fire. Has a bit of I would probably say a little bit of an attitude problem. Just kind of my 2 cents, especially with Leeds. And take away the Angus thing. He kind of was a guy that showed up in weird spots, but wasn't there for his team when I think they needed him most. Gusan, as James said, I would probably kind of put at the highest point in that list. Of course, Brighton looking at him, that's a good sign. But really interesting. I think, as you said, Ryan, really good feet. So he's just kind of a unique player in that regard. 6'2", just another guy, right? We're just gonna have a tall team that will just kind of destroy set pieces. It's just so hard for me to talk about Lyon players right now without feeling bad for Bluist. So it's like, it's just poor John Texter. But depending on the day you talk to Texter, you might get a really good deal. So and he's a really good player. He's a really good player.
Only thing on Gasson, I guess, is if that 28 million rumor has any legs, like, that's still a bigger outlay than I'd like to see us go at that position. Yeah. So I think, that might be cost prohibitive in some sense, but the player himself, like, no qualms.
I mean, he's the type of guy, though, like, just if he starts putting it a little bit together, he could be in 2 years. And sometimes those bigger guys tend to mature a little bit later, too. I like the fact that he can run with it. He can run in behind it. He has some versatility. He's the type of player that could maybe really do well in the Premier League, or he'll be in MLS in 2 years. I don't know. Anyway, I like him too. So, okay, a couple guys here that are worth mentioning too that we've been linked to a little bit. All right, we'll do this one first and then we'll get the other one out of the way, which is going to take some time, I think. So, Promise David or David, whatever, my international language is not the greatest. 23 at USG, Brighton, sister club, kind of, now that Tony Bloom had to sell some of his ownership. I mean, he's a Canuck, 6'5", absolutely massive guy. Looks a little bit clumsy, but I'll tell you one thing too. If you watch his highlights, now I've watched him play a couple times. I mean, his past year has been ridiculous.
Go just pause this episode right now and go watch his YouTube highlights. He looks like the purest striker of the ball you've probably ever seen. Everything this guy hits is perfectly placed and goes in the back of the net. He's huge. He's not, obviously, as a result of that, doesn't have great acceleration, but he's got pretty decent top end pace once he gets going, and he's deceptively quick, kind of in tight spaces. He can beat guys off the dribble. He just is one of those YouTube highlight, looks unbelievable. Spend $50 million on the guy, I don't care.
We promise it's worth it.
Looks like someone from the Discord decided to join the pod today in spirit. Good Lord, the puns and the dad. I mean, God, Manhanius, never going to leave us ever. Thanks, buddy. Okay, a couple cautions for him, though. You're right, though, Jay. So you watch his highlight reel. He looks unbelievable, and he is massive. And, I mean, he's come out of kind of nowhere. He's in the Estonian league and doing well. And maybe this is real. Maybe this is him realizing everything, I guess. But I'm going to throw caution a little bit. So his shots on target percentage in the league this year is over 50%. Y-Scout has him for the year across all competitions is 60.6%. Okay, that is not sustainable. No one is doing that. He was 45% in Estonia the year before and 36% the year before. So it's okay, is this him improving, or So my problem is, the rest of his game, frankly, isn't that great. I mean, he has some good natural tendencies when he gets in the final third. He does. He's got a good feel for scoring goals. He'll float to the space in a real good way. He every now and then pulls a dribble off in a fake, and guys just go flying because they're like, I cannot believe a guy this big can do that. And his shooting is accurate for sure. He's maybe not going for corners as much as you'd like, but he's so damn powerful. You try and save it, you knock into the net. A couple thoughts, though. There's been some history in the Belgian league that would maybe have you question a little bit of his performance.
Yeah, and what Ryan's referring to, of course, is none other than Paul Ananachu.
That's Exhibit A.
Yeah, who plays for Southampton, right? He's scored some goals this season, so I'll give him a little bit of credit, but for a while was kind of laying on a goose egg, right? Of course, when they were trying to stay up, as well as just kind of his just overall body of work. Kevin Denke, of course, now plays for FC Cincinnati, had 23 just last year, both led the league. So it's a bit of, is it the league or is it the player, right? And if you're just looking at that sample size, it's not really friendly to him. My kind of, I think, worry, and of course, as James mentioned, the highlights are incredible, but, can he be kind of found out or be not as effective, right? If he kind of has 2 or 3 of those basic skills, and you have a center back, and the Premier League has plenty of them, right? That can match him for both height and pace.
Yeah, and that's what I saw when I watched the matches in I think it was at Europa where they were playing against Ajax, because Sutolo, who I love, Joseph is a really clever center back, and he was just killing him. I mean, just going around him. Every now and then he locked him down. And he couldn't get around him. But yeah, I mean, the other thing I'll say is like Tolu Arokodare has 17 goals, is leading the league. He plays for Genk. He's even bigger. So, and he's got obvious limitations as an overall center forward, but some of the same things where you're surprised. I don't think he's as good as David is, but James, thoughts?
I was just going to say, I feel like we'd sign him. He'd show up at Finch Farm, and Branthwaite and O'Brien and Tark would just make him look absolutely out of his depth the first day of training, and he would never see the light of day on
good practice.
Yeah.
I think there's too many savvy guys. Don't get me wrong. I mean, he should go somewhere or stay there where he plays. Because, I mean, if his improvement curve continues, sky's the limit for him in his defense. I mean, he really is a natural player in the final third, even if he looks a little awkward sometimes. It's just the rest of the stuff he has to do better with. He's just not as active in transition, and he can run with a little bit in the Belgian league, but at the higher level, man, you can't. And pressing and stuff. I mean, it was crazy. Ajax would sit there. The keeper would literally wait for him and just sit on it. And he'd come in and he'd dish it over to Hato or whatever. It was really kind of interesting. It's also a little bit similar to Beto, so I guess you kind of get some similarities, but not quite. Look, they want 20 million euros. We think Paris FC are after him too. He'd be an interesting player in Ligue 1. I hope he plays and develops. I really hope, and it could be interesting to see what he does. But half of his creation also numbers, which you look at 4 assists, you're like, oh, wow, that's interesting. It's all take-ons and shots. Like, he's not pulling it back and creating for others or playing them through. Every now and then you get a glimpse. So, I don't know, maybe he's a late bloomer too. It could be okay. I wouldn't go for him too. I just don't think he'll get that much utility right now. He needs to go somewhere and play. So that's just my take. Final thoughts before we get to the last one here. Okay, let's bring it up. So he's not 24, 25. He can play center forward. He can play other positions. He can create. He can run with it a little bit. What about bringing Richie home? We've been linked, or whatever that means.
Man, I'm so happy for him that he has a Europe trophy. He deserves it, and I'm glad he contributed to the final. Sometimes you have to leave the past in the past. I don't see in any world why Tottenham would just loan him to us, right, without an aggressive loan fee of some sort, especially now having another European competition next year. And I feel for the guy, because I just feel like he's just, injured pretty consistently now, just kind of as he's getting older. So the nostalgic in me, of course, would love to see him back. I think he could still be effective. There's no question about that. I worry that, he's put so much on his body, of course, some fault of Everton and just what he's done to keep us up. But yeah, it's just more of the nostalgic feel than an actual fit.
I mean, he's a fit. The versatility does make him a fit just by its nature, and that's a role that he occupied very well for us for a few years. But yeah, as much as the nostalgic in me would love to see it and love to see him return to his glory days of 10, I just don't really think it's a smart move overall. I think it's too high risk. Still a very good player. Hope he can stay healthy and have a good season next year. I just don't see it happening yet.
I mean, it'd be interesting, but I mean, look, yeah, I mean, that would be super cool. But I think the bottom line is I've never understood why Ange didn't play him more. Yeah. I know he was hurt sometimes, so I get that availability-wise. But when he played, they scored. His movement was so critical to that team. So I never understood it personally. I mean, once he was stopped being available, I get it. That's fine. So I don't think, say Ange goes. I mean, there's no way someone like Thomas Frank's going to come in here and think, yeah, I want to get rid of this guy on loan. There's just no way. I mean, you got to find better use for him, I would think. All right, last category. American players. We actually do have quite a few center forwards out there that'd be kind of fun. Balogun, I don't think is going to happen. Ricardo Pepe, coming back from injury. Be an interesting fit. I don't know if I would rely on. I mean, he's a pretty polished guy, can score. Daryl DK, I think, just too many questions about fitness. Otherwise, I'd love to take a chance on that guy. If that guy could ever stay healthy, he's a beast.
And so awesome.
I like him, too. He has some good natural tendencies, too, even if he's not perfectly precise technically. He's got good feel for the game, and he's just a physical, absolute beast. But honestly, I don't know if he'll ever be a 90-minute guy. I just don't think he could do it. I mean, it's just size is more. It looks like a running back, man. He does not look like a... But he's so much better than that. So Damian Downs, 20-year-old at Köln in the second Bundesliga. I don't think he's quite there yet, but he's an interesting player. So, but he's not even. I mean, Chermiti, I think, would do just as well. What about the big kid from Charlotte as a backup? No?
I don't think so. Not totally sold.
Not yet. Why would he want to do that, too? I don't know. Josh Sargent, killing it at Norwich. Can play some different positions. I bet he gets a move, though. I bet you someone makes a move for him. I know he's been really good at Norwich, but I actually think he's a decent player. I don't know if everything he does translates perfectly well to the Premier League, though, to be perfectly honest. He's different, though. He can create like he really is. He's almost a second striker at times, too. So, I mean, it's not the craziest shout ever if you could get a deal there, but I think we got some better fits above.
Yeah, I mean, it's a jump. The quality, I think he might get found out a little bit. Striker at the top level, I think as a second striker, Cam may be interesting, but much rather have Charlie or Njai or a new signing in that position than Josh Sargent, to be honest.
Before we move to left wing, everyone's favorites after that discussion.
So I would probably go with Woltemade, of course, is kind of the number one option. You look at El Bilal Toure, I think he feels like in the realm of reality in terms of like an option. And, if the committee's looking at old, post-it notes, right, from the regime as they're cleaning out closets and drawers, right, they might find some notes that they like. But in all seriousness, no, I think, those are two really, I would say, solid options. Of course, Sulemana, I love that guy dearly. So, of course, he's not a true center forward, and he would kind of fit more in the winger discussion when we get to that. But I would also say kind of out of that other group, Gusan, right? He'd be an interesting like loan obligation, right? If you kind of like looked forward, and the French league loves to do that, right? So you saw what West Ham did with Todibo. Of course, it's not working out for them very well, but so yeah, if I had to kind of just look at that list, those are the guys I'd kind of really highlight from that.
Yeah, Voltemata for me, clear first choice. I would say Tammy Abraham on loan as a secondary option really wouldn't make me too upset. And Promise David, just for the incredible journey that would follow. I just say we go for it.
One thing is, Njai can play center forward a little bit, so I
know we didn't even talk about that. I
thought
that too.
That's okay. I mean, he's a different type, and he could definitely occupy that to some extent. But yeah, Voltemade I love. I mean, he's just absolutely one of my favorite players out there. I would love to get that done. I wonder if Gassan was more like a $20 million. It's a lot more attractive. 28 when you start getting close to 30, I think that's a lot for a guy. You almost want to pencil him in at right wing. So, and if you're going to spend that, you might as well spend 35, maybe 40 on Voltemade. I think he's worth it. But yeah, I think if you can't really get that deal in the range that you want because there's so many other needs, Abraham, dare to be great loan like a Ferguson or El Bilal Toure would be really interesting, though, knowing that even if it didn't work out, Njai could hop in there, too. Okay, I think that wraps up center forward. That was a lot, but look, man, I mean, that's a position of interest, right? It's the one people love talking about. So, all right, left-sided attack. This is going to be very short, folks, and I'll tell you why. So, a couple different reasons. So, we've got Njai. We've got Alcaraz. We've got Dwight McNeil. I know people think he's a 10. Just kidding. I think he's fine on the left side, too. There's so many options there. And I think all those guys, frankly, on that left side are pretty good. Even Dwight. I think Dwight's a viable option on that side, too. So, okay, Y Scout top 30 for lateral forwards. That includes right and left. Njai is 15th. So I think that's a pretty good call to him that I want that guy tucking inside on the left. We'll talk about left backs overlapping when we get to that point, but let's start a left wing. And in the talent ID models of 42 players on the left side, Njai was only 25 and Charlie was only 26. So it's a little bit disappointing. But if you look into it, you have Njai, who has a high defensive rating, high defensive profile, and we saw it, right? He scored a decent amount. It's the creativity that held him back in terms of the overall model. Now, that being said, the guy led the championship in assists. So the guy, we just haven't seen it, right? And I think one of those things is what we set up top, right? It's getting him closer to goal. I think you'll see. In fact, when I watched him back in the day in the championship, the number one standout quality he had was his vision with his back to goal. Like he would see guys that he had no business seeing and could get the ball to him. So we haven't even really seen that, right? Which is exciting to me. It makes you also wonder that maybe you sneak him into the middle a little bit more. So if you go and get a guy that can play on the right, maybe they can play on the left too. So I'm not going to rule it out. So we'll talk about it a little bit when we get to maybe right wing and kind of make it a little bit more of a wider open thing. But anyway, Charlie in particular too, I mean, 14th out of 42 in terms of creator from the left wing. That's pretty good. You know, winger numbers are good. Defensive numbers are good too. So my thought is this. I mean, we know Dwight can deliver out there a little bit. Are we set at left wing? You know what I mean? I mean, I think that we've got a lot of depth here, and I just think we should focus on some other positions. Also, maybe for the sake of the pod. Otherwise, every one of these is going to be 5 hours.
I mean, there's no position at Everton that's had more depth in the last 7 years, probably, than, well, besides the year of the 5 number 10s.
Right back.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we've
had
depth.
I guess last year we had depth, just not any good.
We're 2 to 3 deep at left wing for quite some time now. It's just that a lot of those guys can't really flip over and play on the right, and that's been a glaring hole in the team. So I'd agree with the assessment, Ryan, that we're okay in this spot. One of the few I think are pretty set, assuming none of these guys leave, and it doesn't seem like any of them would, unless Man United want to buy Dwight McNeil for some reason, which is one of the crazier links, but crazier things have happened. So yeah, I think this is a one we can kind of check off and say we're good. We don't need to spend anything here. We don't really need any. There's no loanees going to come in and I think likely get minutes. So I'm comfortable with our options. Feels weird to say that, but I do.
I think also too, and we'll get to it in kind of the future iterations of this series, is we're going to look at some guys that I think are pretty flexible, right, in regards to their play styles. So, you know, a worst case scenario, right, if we have an injury crisis, my hope is that if we, you know, procured any of those individuals, that they would be able to play left wing. Of course, maybe not to that level, and it would be a better level than Ashley Young playing left wing, right? So, and no shade towards Ashley Young, but it's just unfortunately, you know, that was kind of the custodians we had playing kind of out of position. So, as you mentioned, James, I think it's just hard to think that we're set at a position, but in terms of the depth as well as I think the quality at here, I think we're in a really good shape.
And for the sake of the pod and the drill and the exercise, well, we can move on.
We spent on just strikers, which is great. As you said, Ryan, sexy position. Everyone wants to talk about the number 9, but I honestly really enjoyed the discussion. Hopefully our listeners enjoyed it.
Wait, we're bringing
as well.
FC Sexy back?
FC Sexy.
We're bringing FC Sexy back?
FC Sexy Friedkins is back. We're back in a big way. So yeah, this first one went an hour. We only got through really like one position in effect. So we're going to keep going through our document here on future episodes. Let us know what you guys think about this. This is definitely more in-depth, I think, at any one position or one topic than we've gone. So if you enjoyed it, let us know. If you think, if there's any other feedback you have, we'd love to hear it. Join our Discord. Reach out to us on socials. Of course, those links are in the description of the episode. But we're looking forward to continuing to roll out this series, and hopefully Everton fans and fans of transfers in general have found this one a value add. So thanks again, everyone. Appreciate the support. And until next time, up the Toffees.